This is the Gateway MX6440, a mid-range consumer-grade laptop from 2006. This is back when Gateway still made things, of course. They aren't relevant anymore, but they still sort of were back in the mid-2000s, like when this was new. This is probably most comparable to the Compaq V4000, another dead brand, and while it was more expensive than the Compaq, it also was just overall better than that computer. This one coming equipped with an AMD Turing 64ML32 processor, 1GB of RAM, a 100GB hard drive, ATI Radeon Express 200M graphics, a DVD RW dual layer drive, a wireless G card, and Windows XP Home Edition with drivers for Windows Vista, which was right around the corner when this was new, with an MSRP of $950 back in 2006 when it was introduced. And this specific one, however, was missing both its RAM and hard drive, so I had to substitute those for lesser components. This has 512 megs of RAM and a 40 gig hard drive. But otherwise, everything is still here and it works fine. Outside of this, finding information on this computer is actually very difficult. Gateway's website from this time kinda sucks, but according to Gateway's old website, this was considered a mobile powerhouse, allowing you to enjoy high-quality entertainment with 32-bit and 64-bit performance. I don't know, sounds like a good thing, I guess. Also, side note, while I'm here, look at what I found on this website. It's the Gateway version of that eMachines laptop. They were apparently still making these in 2006. It's not quite the same thing, it's better, but it's the same chassis and everything. And like the MX6440, this case design was used on a lot of other Gateway notebooks, so it's not like you can easily identify it just by looking at the case. Still, while it's a fairly basic design, it's fairly nice. It's all plastic, of course, and it's this silver with black highlights combo, which wasn't uncommon back then. While this one is still in decent condition, there's quite a bit of scuffs and scratches on it. On the front, we have 2 stereo speakers, some LEDs for battery charge and power, and microphone and headphone jacks. On the right side of the laptop, we have a PC card slot, mini FireWire port, a 4-in-1 card reader, 2 USB 2.0 ports, 10100 Ethernet, as well as a 56K modem, and 2 more USB 2.0 ports. On the back, we have the DC-19 jack and the VGA port with the screws. And on the left side of the laptop, we have the Kensington lock slot, a blank where an S-Video port would have been, the cooling vent, and the optical drive. Despite being almost 20 years old, the hinges on this laptop are still very strong, and while there is a little bit of movement from the base, you can still easily open the lid with one hand. The palm rest on this laptop is painted silver, probably like the rest of this case. It's only obvious because the paint started to wear off from where palms would normally be after many years of using this computer. Up top we have the power button, the fairly worn keyboard, which, other than it being worn, I don't really have a lot of comments to make. It's just a keyboard. It's a fairly standard layout. It's got some media controls. Honestly, out of all of the consumer laptops I've done videos on so far, this is probably one of the better keyboards to type on. Okay, well there is one minor thing. The function and left control keys are switched. So sometimes it makes things a little weird when you go to hit the control key and, well, hit the wrong key since they're the same size. I've seen it before, it's not the first time, but still, it's a bit strange. Below that we have the trackpad with a dedicated scrolling area. It's just kind of okay, I guess. And the buttons, which are separate from the pad, and as you might be able to tell by how loose the primary button is, these buttons can become loose over time as the plastic gets worn. Below that we have some more LEDs for wireless, caps lock, num lock, optical drive activity, and hard drive activity. and the stickers for the ATI Radeon Express 200M chipset, the AMD Turion 64 CPU, and Windows XP. Finally, the display, which is unfortunately glossy. Otherwise, it's a 1280 by 800 15.4 inch panel, which is fine, except on mine at least, it is really dim. So it's even more unfortunate that it's a glossy panel because it's really hard to see a lot on this display. It's probably my biggest complaint about this computer. On the bottom we have the battery, which is actually still original, and rather remarkably, still holds a charge even to this day. It's not much, it's only like 20 minutes worth, but it's still something. This is the 6-cell battery, but 9-cell batteries were also a thing for these. Below that there's a blank, presumably for a docking base port, the component door for the Wi-Fi card, which was manufactured by Broadcom, and under that we have the hard drive space. Like I said, this is a 40 gigabyte Fujitsu piece of trash, but it does its job, I guess. You'll just see why it's a piece of trash in a little bit. And the big component door for the rest of the components, which has a mercury warning and the Windows XP product key, and also the intake for the cooling fan. Under this door we have the RAM, which again, 512 megs of DDR333. Came out of a PowerBook, I think, I don't know. It does the job. There's also the ATI IXP450 chip next to it, and the CPU. You can actually get at it without having to take apart the whole computer. This is great. I love it when this happens. This doesn't happen very often with consumer laptops. It uses a weird bit that I don't have, so you'll have to just look at the CPU in the socket, but hey, a win is a win. Presumably this CPU can be upgraded, but it's good enough as is. There's some unoccupied spaces where RAM chips could have gone on this board, presumably implying that this board design could have had a higher end GPU equipped, but that's not the case on this one. Finally, you can also get at the screw for the optical drive under here. It's got this giant bracket on it that goes around the whole perimeter of the drive, but anyway, it's fairly boring. It's just a DVD RW dual layer drive. It is the original to this computer and it does still work, which is a score, apparently. So honestly, pretty good. You can get at everything without having to actually take apart the whole computer. Anyway, back to that screen. Like I said earlier, it's pretty dim. This is running off its own battery power though, so there's proof it works. It doesn't last very long, so I'll have to plug it in. And for the sake of my sanity, I also plugged it into my capture card, or not. Yeah, the output looks great. Turns out I had to just disable the internal display, and then it was fine, but still, this thing doesn't really seem to like my capture card very much. Anyway, this is version 68.04. Not sure what happened to the other 67 revisions. This might be the first laptop I've seen in a while with an event log that you can view. You can also set things like plug-and-play OS, legacy USB support, and large disk access mode, as well as an auto dim setting, and a battery auto learning thing. So that's a bit interesting, but otherwise it's about what you would expect for a consumer BIOS. And of course this is running Windows XP since that's what it shipped with. However, I don't have the media for this computer, but what I do have is the media for a different version of the computer, the MX6440, which is a Windows XP Media Center Edition computer, but otherwise, as far as I'm aware, is similar enough that this media seems appropriate. At least the software load is basically the same. Even in an operating system, this thing really hates my capture card since most resolutions it just kind of outputted it in a really stupid way, so it's either this or I film a display that I can't freaking see anything off of, so I'll take the capture card. This system came with a 6-month trial of AOL 9, which makes sense because it has that modem. This program called BigFix, which doesn't work anymore. This was apparently part of Gateway Shield, a security solution. Cool. There's the Broadcom utility, some Cyberlink DVD software, of course, the manuals for the system. You can get a view of that aforementioned S-Video jack from earlier, presumably on a higher end model of this. And something else I found interesting is that it seems like this case was used on so many different models because in this PDF the display is entirely different. There's Gateway Games powered by Wild Tangent, Google Desktop, Microsoft Digital Image Starter Edition 2006, Microsoft Works 8.5, as well as a shortcut for MSN and Carta Online, a 30-day trial of Napster, an old version of QuickTime, the Windows Digital Media Enhancements, because Media Center Edition, Adobe Reader 7, Microsoft Money 2006, this wireless secure easy setup, which I can't actually use at all, and finally these system recovery programs. There's the application recovery, the recovery media creator, and the actual system recovery program itself. The media for this computer is SoftThink's PC Angel, which is what HP and eMachines used. eMachines was bought by Gateway, so I guess that makes sense, but just like eMachines, this media doesn't check the system it's running on. You can just run it on anything. You could run this on a virtual machine and it's just okay with that. It's hilarious. Because it rebuilds the recovery partition automatically, you can just press F11 on startup and it will boot to the recovery partition, so it's fairly easy to restore this thing. Finally, I did check the Media Center program just to see if there were any interesting customizations, and the answer is no. Other than some Cyberlink stuff, it's basically all just standard. Now, I've been comparing this to the Compaq V4000, but I think you could probably also compare it in a way to the HP A1206N, since it's kind of the same hardware, just in a laptop instead of a desktop. So you'd think performance would be pretty similar, but honestly, compared to those offerings, this is better. Web browsing isn't particularly good, because like I said, there's barely any RAM in this computer, but it will do it. And you know what? Gaming performance on this computer, honestly, isn't that bad. It's not particularly impressive. It's not like this is going to be my next gaming computer. I tried running the same stuff I did on the A1206N at similar settings, and while it's not great, it is better than that A1206N. So either this thing is just a peach and it's freaking amazing, or what's more likely is that HP desktop is really embarrassing and highlights just how screwed up that motherboard was. It's not amazing, it does still struggle pretty hard, but it's better than those other two computers. It didn't crash in SimCity like that HP desktop did, so I guess that's something. And thermals, while doing this, are about the same as that Compaq laptop, with it peaking at 85 degrees Celsius, which isn't uncommon. Subjectively, I think the cooling fan on this computer is pretty annoying to listen to, but fortunately, overall noise from the system is pretty good actually. This chassis seems to be pretty well insulated, since you don't really hear a lot of noise from the drives either. Though that cooling fan will get pretty loud. If we're going to compare it to that Compaq laptop, it gets a lot louder. The optical drive in this computer is also fairly average. It is an 8x DVD 24x CD drive. It works just fine, noise isn't too bad. It doesn't use a stupid proprietary bezel like the MX6440 did, so this drive could go in another computer with no problems at all. The only thing that's a bit weird, could be due to this bezel, is that this drive likes to get jammed a lot. So sometimes it won't open, and other times you have to retry a few times to actually get it to stay closed. It's kind of weird for a laptop. This computer would have originally shipped with a 4200 RPM disk, but this one is actually 5400 RPM. It doesn't mean anything though. The only reason I'm bringing it up is in case you wanted to know what a disk with 2 million reallocated sectors looks like. The only other thing of note with this Windows install is that Gateway has their own screensaver, kind of like a really slow version of the DVD screensaver. So that's about it for the Gateway MX6440, which honestly is a pretty good laptop actually. I don't really have a lot to complain about. The hardware could be better, of course, but for general Windows XP tasks, well, I'd say it's better than that compact with a Pentium M for sure. And in theory, there are upgrade possibilities since it seems like this case and motherboard design were fairly generic in that they were used across lots of different models. This also means I've finally done a video on every single one of these systems in this lot of stuff that I'm about to get rid of. This is basically one of the only things I've been working on for the last 2.5 months, so I'm probably going to take a break from doing this style of video for at least a little while, but I'll definitely be back with this type of content next year. I've still got plenty of computers to do this kind of video on.